Hi, everybody. My name is Jean Steele, and I have a business called Happy People Win. And I know a lot of you who are on this have seen me speak or come to some of my sessions. And I decided, with all this going on in the world, what can I do? Well, I can offer some free sessions. And so I focused on resilience and stress management. And this is number 3 of the 5-part series. We're going to talk about resilience today and optimism, stinking thinking, and a few other things. So let's get started. If you want any of the information that's in the presentation, I have a questionnaire and I'm going to read a poem at the end. You can go to my Facebook page and download that. And then if you want to rewatch the video or share it with someone, it's on my YouTube channel. If you want to get a hold of me personally, you can email me at this email address. And if you have any questions about anything else that is not pertinent to this training, you can contact my trusty sidekick, Jenny, at happypeoplewin.com. So let's again focus on resilience. In my last session, I talked about mindfulness and gratitude. And this one, I'm going to go into optimism and self-compassion. And then the session next week, we're going to talk about grit, kind of the final section of the whole aspect of resilience. And again, resilience is the ability to bounce back from tough situations. So optimism is hopefulness and confidence about the future and anticipating the best possible outcome. And it's interesting because I've seen a lot on social media about the potential horrible things that are going to happen. And the reality is we don't really know what's going to happen. And optimism, I really feel, will help get me through this. I was on a Facebook post the other day and someone was writing something negative. And I said that I'm pretty optimistic, in that I think we're going to see ourselves as world citizens now instead of just Americans, and we're going to help each other and maybe take care of the earth even better. So that is my optimism speaking right there. They call optimism the engine of resilience, the belief in a positive future. And if you say, well, I'm really happy today, but we're all going to die tomorrow, that is not optimism. Watching the news, and I shared before, I don't have a television, and my mom has her television on 24/7, and I really worry about all that negative information. There's very few positive things that are discussed, and we have to be careful about overwhelming ourselves with the negative stuff. Great quote from Winston Churchill: a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. So this is the thing, especially if you're a control freak, this is very, very stressful right now. And I think it's important to differentiate between what you can control and what you can't, and then to actually accept the things that you can't control. Great prayer. It's used a lot in 12-step programs. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Perfect for these times. So again, with Facebook, some of you know I had a hip replacement last year. And so in my downtime, I was getting on Facebook and I was getting into kind of Facebook fights. I hope I didn't call anybody bad things. The worst thing I wrote is please don't procreate, because some of their information was so wrong. And I thought, please don't have children to continue on this trajectory of insanity. But what I realize is we need to be careful. We need to stop. We need to stop going to those sites. People can hide behind their screen. I think my friend called him like, I can't remember, but Facebook bravery, that people will write things that they would never say to another person to their face. So be careful of doing too much with social media. And also be careful about trying to predict the future. I don't think anybody can right now. And we tend to predict it in a negative way. And again, I'm suggesting don't do that. We often catastrophize, and we're going to talk more about that in this session, and we blow situations totally out of proportion. And it's like we're all going to die scenario. And we have to be careful of that because that is not realistic or true. One of your homework assignments, and if this is your first time attending, I give things to do and think about, is to write down or talk with whomever 3 ways that this situation could be worse. And there's a lot of ways. I have a roof over my head is one of the ways it could be worse if I didn't. And I was thinking about technology and social media and the ability to go on our phones and computers and watch a movie. So thank goodness this did not happen in the 40s. And thank goodness this didn't happen in the 80s and 90s, because now we have the technology to do things like I'm doing today. Another thing to be more optimistic is to surround yourself with positivity and positive entertainment. I don't think this is the best time to watch a slasher movie. However, I tend to like murder mysteries, and I've been reading those and it hasn't made me depressed. So whatever works for you, but watching positive entertainment I think is really good. Be careful with Facebook. Look at the positive things. And if you, since you signed up for this, if you didn't get my newsletter before, I usually send it out every other month this year, but I'm going to be sending it out every month and just have it short and sweet. And one of the things I always do is I have 6 3-minute and under videos that will make you happy. And I get a lot of them from A+. Go to their site. They have wonderful, happy videos. And another great site is Upworthy, which again has very positive videos. Read a book. Again, not having a TV, I read a book every single night. And I vacillate between my murder mystery novels and reading books about work. I'm actually reading a really good one right now that I will hold up I got from the library, Rising Strong by Brené Brown. Excellent. Watch positive movies. The last movie that I remember that I was just so happy about that I saw in the theater is Peanut Butter Falcon. And it's just a feel-good movie, and I think we need to look at those things now. Greenery. Outside in your garden, if you don't have that, plants in your house. Research shows that there's both positive psychological and physical benefits from greenery. Light your candles. I think we all have them as decorations, but we tend not to light them. And it's so lovely in the evening, just that ambiance with candles. Bring out your good silverware and your good plates and dress up your table every night that you eat. I just saw a funny video that a friend sent me that this woman says, I'm doing great. She's talking to her daughter. I'm doing great. I'm doing everything right. I get up, get dressed, put on my makeup, eat my fruit. And she's taking a sip of wine. She goes, which I'm doing right now. And she's slovenly on the couch. And why are we doing that to ourselves? Why don't we make this more of an event? I read this story that was pretty heartbreaking about this woman who bought this negligee, that beautiful lace negligee that was quite expensive, that she was going to wear for her husband when they went on vacation. And tragically, she passed away. And when her husband was going through her items, he found that, and it broke his heart. And he actually had her buried in it. And the thing is, why are we saving things for a special event when every day should be a special event? This is my living room, and I included this picture because I hired an amazingly talented artist who works at our theater here, PCPA. And in her downtime, I said, can you come over and paint my family tree? And some of you are talented enough to do it yourself, and it's a great project to do during this downtime. So the next thing I want to talk about is self-compassion. And as I mentioned in our first session, if anybody talked to ourselves the way, wait a minute, if anybody talked to us, how's that? The way we talk to ourselves, we would hate them. If I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I go, oh my God, those bags under my eyes are hideous. And I go into a workplace and someone says, Jean, please don't look at me. The bags under your eyes are hideous. I would hate them. Everybody who was heard would hate them. And I already had said it to myself. So self-compassion is forgiving yourself for things that have gone wrong and channeling your energy into the next steps. So let's look at self-compassion. It's about believing in yourself. And this needs to be a healthy belief. I remember when American Idol first started, and I used to watch it, and the people trying out, some of them were absolutely horrific. And they wouldn't get in, and they would yell at the judges, and they would cry on their parents' shoulder, and their parents say, they're just horrible because you have a magical voice and you should be famous. And no, they shouldn't. So I think it's important to have a healthy belief in ourselves. I found this picture because one of my clients told me this great story. And she said that she was in recovery, and this was an assertiveness class I was teaching. And one of the things she learned is affirmations and being positive about yourself. So she would write a note to herself with lipstick on her bathroom mirror, kind of as an affirmation. And one time she put, I love you up there. And she had started dating this guy, and she didn't know him very well yet. They were on their third date, and she invited him over for dinner, and he used the bathroom. And he comes out acting really weird. And she realizes, oh my God, I have I love you up there. And he said, yeah, it's a little uncomfortable. You know, I don't really know you that well. And she goes, oh my God, that wasn't for you. That was for me, which is a whole other story. But I thought it was cute. So there's 3 elements of self-compassion. In the the second session, we talked about mindfulness. So I'm not going to go over that again, but I want to talk about the 2 others. And one of them is connectedness, to be connected to the world around us. And there's been a few interesting studies that talk about the dangers of a lack of social connection. And one of them was on seniors, and it was probably about 15 years ago, when they research showed that more important to a senior than diet and exercise is not being isolated. And isolation is a lot of what we're doing right now. And so I really suggest that you reach out to your tribe and connect with them. You cannot hang out with negative people and expect to live a good life. And I really have been careful about who I include in my life, because negative people stress me out. And it's interesting because I do have a group of friends who are just positive, who love their life, love their work, and it really fuels me and makes me happier. Be with those who help your being. And these are people who you can cry on their shoulder, and they will also kick your butt if it needs to be kicked. Connect to thrive. And research shows overwhelmingly we are at our best when we have our human connections. You are not alone. And one of the heartbreaking things about what I do is frequently when I speak, I have someone come up afterwards and say, you know, it was really interesting about the connectedness, but I don't have any friends, which is really heartbreaking. And there are ways that you can connect with people in a healthy way. A friend of mine was going through a deep depression, and I didn't live near him, and he was isolating himself. And I said, you love to hike. Find a hiking group and get together. You don't even have to talk while you're hiking, but just being around other people. And he called me and he goes, it's so much fun. I've made a lot of friends, which is lovely. Find your tribe and love them hard. And importantly is this, right? So the next one is self-kindness. And this is an interesting one. When I taught college, I taught college for a number of years, and I felt that one of my jobs, besides teaching them the topic I was hired to teach, is teaching them to be kind to themselves and to appreciate themselves and not to knock them down. If others could hear your thoughts, would they be shocked by what you say about yourself? And think about that. If all of your negative thoughts were written down and shared with other people, how would you feel about that? We need to move from the critical inner voice to the compassionate inner voice. Positive thinking. absolutely helps reduce stress. And it can improve your mental health. So this little girl should be our role model.
Now, my whole house is great. I can do anything good. I like my school. I like everything. I like my dad. I like my cousins. I like my aunts. I like my Allisons. I like my mom. I like my sisters. I like my dad. I like my hair. I like my haircuts. I like my pajamas. I like my stuff. I like my room. I like my whole house. My whole house is great. I can do anything good. Yeah.
So what you need to do is do her routine and do not forget the happy dance at the end. I put this up here because there's some excellent research and articles on the Stanford site, and they actually do research on compassion and giving back. Give yourself a self-compassion break. 3 things to do. Be mindful, stop and notice what you're doing. The second thing that I think is so important with self-compassion is you think you're the only one who's going through this or who feels that way. Absolutely not. And then finally, be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break. A moment of self-compassion can change your entire day, and a string of such moments can change the course of your entire life. When I was teaching, one of the days, one of the kids came into my class and he was kind of walking with his backpack on his back looking glum. And I said, hey, Jason, I have to tell you something. He goes, what? And I said, your paper is phenomenal. You are a gifted writer. I read it last night and I kind of want to even give more writing assignments since you are so good. He goes, what? And I go, you are an amazing writer. And his whole body language changed. And he was like, thank you. So I said to the students, I said, I'm going to read your names out for roll, because I did take roll, even though it was college. And I said, when I say your name, I want you to stand up and we're all going to cheer for you. And they said, that is so stupid. And I go, I'm the professor. You have to do what I say. So they did it and they got into it and they were blowing kisses or flexing and doing these different things. So the next class, they said, we might as well do it again. And so we continued it, and then I changed it to you have to stand up and say something that you love about yourself. And it was really emotional, and it was a really good lesson for all of us. So I want to talk about distorted thinking, and especially in these times, our minds tend to shift naturally to the negative. And I want to point this out, and hopefully you can catch those negative moments and change your distorted thoughts. So it's about self-recognition and regulation. It's noticing, recognizing, and then also realizing that you are the only person who's able to change those thoughts. You are in control. It absolutely ties into the whole resilience idea, and it is a part and a problem of being able to thrive by having this distorted thinking. So here are some common tendencies. Ruminating about the past while worrying about the future. Being unaware of the good things in your life. And it is exhausting, I have to tell you, if this is you, that you're always complaining, I can't even believe this. Years ago, I was at a conference and this guy was saying, you know, you buy a $100,000 vehicle and someone keys it. And I went, you spent $100,000 on a car? He goes, that wasn't my point, which I replied, then why'd you say the cost? But besides that, he wasn't grateful and he was complaining. And I thought, you have a $100,000 car. You probably can afford to have that buffed out. Stop. Taking a pessimistic perspective when explaining what has happened to them. Everything is negative. Being judgmental of others and critical of yourself. And I think this is true, that when you judge people, it says more about you than it does about them. And finally, giving up when you're overwhelmed. So here's some common thinking traps, and there's more than this. I just wanted to share a few of them with you. And stop, recognize, and think of any of these that might pertain to you. So the first one is jumping to conclusions. We tend to make assumptions very quickly without thinking through. And I'll give you an example. I had a gal in the class who shared a great story with me. She said that they all have cubicles, and her best friend ran past her cubicle in the morning and didn't even look in and say hi. So this gal tells me, I go through all the stages of grief for the next few hours. I do not get any work done. I'm stressing out about why my best friend didn't say hi. And I go through, what did I do? I feel like, you know, did I say something rude? And then she gets to the point where, you know what? It's her problem. So about 11:30, her best friend sticks her head in the cubicle and says, hey, where do you want to go for lunch? And the woman goes, oh, we're friends? And she goes, of course we're friends. Why would you say that? She goes, well, you ran by my cubicle this morning and didn't even say anything. And the woman says, did you see what time it was? I was 20 minutes late to work because Highway Patrol followed me into the parking lot and gave me a ticket, and I was late for work. So I was really stressed out and I didn't even think about it. And the woman goes, oh, okay. So this one wastes 3 hours ruminating over something rather than just going to her cubicle and say, what happened? So what you do, in the absence of information, we jump to the worst conclusions. Number 2, mind reading. This is distorted thinking, you guys, when you think they should know. So you ask, just like the woman should have gone to the other woman's cubicle and said, what's going on? And then let it go. Because we tend to imagine a conversation. I remember years ago, a friend of mine said, I do not want a surprise party. And I said, okay. And he goes, really, really? And I said, no problem. It was his birthday. So we go out to dinner, we come back to the house, and he goes, he's kind of cleaning himself up. I go, what are you doing? He goes, I know you have a surprise party in there for me. I go, no, I don't. He goes, it's okay. So we go in, there's no surprise. And he goes, I can't believe you didn't have a surprise party. I said, you told me not to. And he goes, well, I thought you would know I really want it. No, because I can't read minds. So speak your truth. Number 3, there's some people who think, the distorted thinking, that everything goes wrong is their fault. I used to work with a gal, Robin, who would apologize constantly. And it made us a little crazy. And so pretty soon we started joking with her and blaming everything and say, Robin, it's ugly out today. And she goes, I know, I'm sorry. The reality is, you are not the cause of every single problem. Number 4 is the opposite. When you think, this is not my problem at all, it's everybody else's fault. And I was working with a county and with their admin professionals, and one of them came up to me after the class and she goes, you know, we have a lot in common. I'm really happy like you are all the time. And I said, well, I'm not happy all the time. And she said, this is my problem. I work in a department and everybody is miserable. And I think that, you know, I go in, I say good morning, no one responds, they're all unhappy, and I really don't know what to do. And I said, well, the cool thing is you're an admin professional. You can work in a different department. She goes, yeah, this is my 3rd department. I went, what? And she goes, yeah. I said, and it's the same problem in every department? She goes, yeah. I go, girlfriend, there is no way that 3 departments have miserable people and you're the only positive person. She goes, uh-huh. I said, no, this is look in the mirror time. Come on. We're not best friends now. So those people tend to do is they blame everybody else for all the negative circumstances. So the 5th one is catastrophizing, which I mentioned earlier. And catastrophizing, here's a great example. I love this cartoon. The fuel light's on, Frank. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. Wait, my mistake. That's the intercom line. And that is a person who catastrophizes. It's always worst case scenario, able to jump to the worst conclusion in a single bound. So what happens is you waste time ruminating on the irrational worst case outcomes of the situation. So what you're doing is it's always worst case scenario, which blocks you from taking any action because you've already convinced yourself the worst is going to happen. which leads to the threat becomes huge. You overestimate the threat and you underestimate your own resources to cope. And I'll tell you, when I get really sick, I can go to this place. And after, you're sick for a week and you have fever and you have cough and runny nose and you can't sleep and everything's bad. And I can get to a point of, what if this is my norm for the rest of my life? And it's crazy thinking, but we all do it. So what triggers catastrophic thinking? One of the things is ambiguity. If everything's a little unclear, your brain tends to go to catastrophize. So let me give you an example. You come home, there's a note on your phone, call your doctor, the results are in. So are you freaking out going, oh my God, I need to do a will. I know it's going to be bad. It's horrible. Or do you say, good, finally I can be told that I do not have what I'm worried about and I will be fine. Another example, you get to work and there's a note on your computer, come down to my office, written by your boss. So do you go into the catastrophizing of, should I clean up my desk now and say goodbye to people before I go down? Or do you say, good, finally he's going to offer me the raise I so need? Another thing is if you value it highly and it's at stake, you can tend to catastrophize. So a partner or a job. And this is the point where you say, I will never love again. I had one of my college students who wasn't coming to class. And I called her and she said she had broke up with the only man she will ever love and she's not coming back to class because she said, I will never love again. And that is a perfect example of catastrophizing. And yes, before even the end of the semester, she'd fallen in love again. Another thing is if we already fear the situation, then we can catastrophize. So if you are absolutely terrified of public speaking, you can work yourself up into a frenzy of what happens if everybody laughs or no one listens or the technology goes wrong. The same thing with flying. If you already fear the situation, it's very easy to work yourself up to catastrophe. If you're exhausted, which a lot of you are right now, even though you might be getting a lot of sleep, you are just depleted. And if you're already feeling that way, you can tend to catastrophize. And with all the misinformation and the information, the accurate information, which we don't know which, is out now, it's really easy to get to that place, and be careful. Number 6 is one that I love because we overestimate the threat, but we underestimate our resources to cope. And the reality is, you guys, we've handled tough situations in the past, and we need to think back on how we handled it and bring those skills to the current situation. We don't know what's going to happen. There is no one for sure who knows exactly what is going to happen with this in the United States or in the entire world. So I want you to look at things that you've handled well in the past and ask yourself the following questions. How I handled a tough situation, even write it down. And I'm not going to go over these, but I did post them on my Facebook page, or you can email me and I can send them to you. So think about a tough situation. How did you handle it? And how can you bring those skills that you obtained or used into the present situation? Number 7 is helplessness. And this is when you think one situation, such as the one we're all in together now, can impact every aspect of your life. So you start thinking, oh my goodness, because I am staying home, it can affect my social life. I can lose my job. I won't have any money. I'm going to be thrown out in the streets. And we start thinking these crazy thoughts. That is catastrophizing, and that is forgetting that we can handle it. Happiness does not depend on what you have or who you are. It solely relies on what you think. So, some final tips. Affirmations. I love this because Simple words can change our lives. And we know when we talk negatively to ourselves, that works. But guess what? Research shows that positivity works as well. So whether you call it an affirmation or a mantra, come up with something, a word or a short statement that you can repeat to yourself. I love this one. I'm doing my best. That is all I can expect of myself. And simply cutting it down to, I'm doing my best, and repeating that throughout the day is a great affirmation or mantra. I mentioned a book last time that I read, Sheryl Sandberg's Option B, and I really liked it. It was a very easy read and excellent information. This one isn't as easy of a read, but if you want more information about resilience, you should definitely check this one out. Here is my to-do list for you. Create at least one positive mantra or affirmation. And if you have kids, this is a great thing for them to do as well. Stop trying to guess the future. Ask yourself, how did you handle a tough situation in the past? And again, bring those skills to what's going on now. 3 ways how this could be worse list. And change 2 things in your environment to surround yourself with positivity. Maybe it's even leaving a photo album out on your coffee table that you can thumb through and reminisce. So I want to read this poem by Kitty O'Meara that I loved. And again, I posted it on my Facebook page. And the people stayed home and read books and listened and rested and exercised and made art and played games and learned new ways of being and were still and listened more deeply. Some meditated, some prayed, some danced. Some met their shadows, and the people began to think differently, and the people healed. And in the absence of people living in ignorant, dangerous, mindless, and heartless ways, the earth began to heal. And when the danger passed and the people joined together again, they grieved their losses and made new choices and dreamed new images and created new ways to live and heal the earth fully as they had been healed. Beautiful. Again, if you want to legally stalk me or get a hold of me, I'm on these 3 social media things. The next session is on April 7th on Tuesday, and we're talking about grit, a part of resilience, and we're also going to start to explore stress management. And on that note, I am done. So thank you so much for attending today, and I look forward to doing this again next week. Thank you.